Isaac Tiemans wants to know, oil, gas, or nuclear? Yes, please. Yes, please. Oil, gas, or nuclear would be great. We had a blackout here a couple days ago. I lost a whole day of work. Power went out around 12:30 or 1 in Sherman Oaks. Didn't come back till 9 p.m. 8 hours without electricity reminds you of how warm it is here in California. I was at my apartment and my office down. Turns out that I need electricity to work. Who thunk it? Just the sense of sort of, oh man, I can't do anything. And then you go back to the apartment and it's like, I know it's going to be warm. And then I know this sounds absurd, but it's like, oh, I forgot it's going to be dark too. This kind of thing is annoying to me when it happens, especially when it happens for why it happens. But it's annoying, and it's annoying. However, I think if I was a young person and the power went out for that length of time and I'd never had that experience, I think I'd start to panic because so many of their friends are not friends in the way that I have friends. I know where my actual friends are. I know where they live. I can find them, and I know if I can reach them and I have a problem, they'll help me. So many of these people's friends are electronic friends that, you lose the internet, man, your friends are gone. I lose the internet, my audience is gone. My friends are still here. Yes, oil, gas, and nuclear is just another way of saying, are we going to be serious about our growing energy needs or are we not? Because oil, gas, and nuclear are the only three technologies, you could probably add coal, that can run an economy and a nation of this complexity. Full stop. Nothing else gets close. The total potential power for geothermal, total potential power for solar and wind is something like 4, 5, 6% of the total energy needs of this country. And so we continue to spend more and more money and more brain power and more public opinion and all this other stuff on these green technologies that are going to come any day now if we keep pumping $500 million into a company. Think about this thing with Solyndra, folks. I think what's most amazing about Solyndra is they took a check for $500 million and then they went bankrupt. How bankrupt do you have to be so that a check for $500 million doesn't get you anything? Man, that's kind of incompetence you really need a government to produce. So yes, the reason we had blackouts is because the state hasn't built a power plant. This country hasn't built a nuclear power plant in 40 years, 50 years. Nuclear is awesome. And when they talk about nuclear power, they talk about these designs of these reactors. The ones that are online were designed in the 50s and the 60s in some cases. There's so many different technologies that are out there now that literally cannot melt down. It is physically impossible. It's not like there's don't worry, we've got a containment or we've got a backup for the pump. The physics will not allow it to happen. So there's that, and then let's talk about Fukushima reactors. Those things were engineered to survive a was it 8.0 or 9.0 magnitude earthquake? Well, the magnitude earthquake that hit them was higher than their design load, and the tsunami was higher than the design load, and the reactors failed. But not one person died. It's kind of obscene, isn't it? How many people died in that tsunami in Japan? Was it 30,000, 40,000 people killed with the wave? And all we do is talk about the reactors. You know how many people died from the failure of these reactors? The failure of the reactors, by the way, to loads that they were never designed for, and failure which was caused by them trying to save the reactor. If they'd pumped water into the reactors early, they would have ruined the reactors, but they wouldn't have had the problems they had. People died as a result of this? None. This catastrophic situation happened. And you know how many people died? None from that nuclear plant. And you find out little things like, well, the reactors wouldn't have had the problems, wouldn't have had the meltdown because they had backup generators that supplied the pumping power to keep them going. Backup diesel generators, fantastic. The problem was that the backup diesel generators were submerged by the tsunami. Well, we know about that now. We probably didn't know that in the past, but now we know. So just take an example of nuclear. It's just so ridiculous. It's so absurd, the level of fear we have over these things. Honestly, it's just unbelievable. So we have these rolling blackouts because California will not pay any money for power plants. Number of people still grows, although actually it's declining now. Maybe in another 20 years or 30 years, we'll decline to the level of the surviving number of power plants. Who knows? But it's appalling, and it's going to get worse. And what do you say? Raphael Jebowitz just said, "Hey, all, I just got home from school. Hi, Mr. Whittle." Hi, Raphael. How are you? Yeah. Gas, oil. Look, oil, we have a lot of oil under our feet. People say wars for oil. You know, I could do 10 minutes on this, and I'm not going to. But frankly, folks, if Iraq had been a war for oil, what would that have looked like? You hear it all the time. Oh, it's a war for oil. What would a war for oil look like? A war for oil looks like this. You forget the cities. You forget Mosul and Baghdad and Fallujah. You don't worry about them. Let those people kill themselves. It's none of our problem. It's not our business. We're here for the oil. You don't go into the cities at all. You destroy Saddam's army. You walk into Baghdad. You dictate the surrender document. You put a dictator in his place. You get out of the city. You go to the oil fields, and you put an armored cordon around those oil fields. And then you basically run convoys of trucks to the oil fields. You pump the stolen oil into the convoy. You take them directly to Basra. You put them on U.S. flag tankers, and you sail them back to the American people, and you cut the gas rate to 40 cents a gallon. That's what a war for oil looks like. And the reason that you don't see that in Iraq is because it wasn't a war for oil. We lost 4,000 people in the cities trying to rebuild that nation and give them a democracy. I think it was worth it. I know people disagree about this, but I think it was the worst region in the country, worst country in the region. Now it's one of two countries in the Middle East where Arabs get a free vote. The other one is Israel, by the way. So it's not a war for oil. We have more oil under our feet than we can burn, and natural gas through fracking, which was the savior here in California. You know, we used to have these dirty diesel buses, and they'd start up, and black clouds of smoke would come out. And everybody says, "Oh, we're switching to was it CNG, compressed natural gas? Oh, it's going to be so clean, fantastic!" Now there's no emissions from the buses. We have 4 times the population in LA that we had in the late 70s, early 80s, and the air is far cleaner than it was because of these emission standards and things like natural gas burning vehicles. So natural gas is the savior, right? Except for fracking. Because what they found out was, you put some engineers and some ingenuity on this problem, we might end up with free or cheap energy. Can't allow that to happen. Capitalism must be destroyed one way or another. So now natural gas is the villain because it works so well. Our carbon emissions are going down not because we decided to put them down because the government said we're going to have caps. Our carbon emissions are going down is because we're burning more natural gas, which is the cleanest carbon fuel there is, I believe, and less coal. Because the market did it, as usual. So, oil, gas, or nuclear, yes, please, all 3. And throw some coal in there, too, because some people need to burn some coal. Moving on.